Ephesians 4:11. It says, and he gave some apostles. Those are people that receive divine inspiration. Those are people that write the Bible. They have apostolic gifts, like the gifts of tongues and miracles. Those are apostles. How many here today are apostles? Okay, good, because I was going to bring out a poisonous snake and have the snake bite you. If you survive, it's true you are an apostle. If you die, then you're not. Alright, there are no apostles today. No one here today is going to be writing a new book of the Bible. There are no apostolic sign gifts. There are no apostles here today. But originally, at first, he gave some apostles. And some prophets. Those are preachers in the Old Testament. They could prophesy into the future. And some evangelists. And some pastors and teachers. So in the church and later, they added deacons. So in the church, you had the pastor teacher. And you had the deacons in the church. Also, there's the office of the evangelist. An evangelist is not the pastor. The evangelist is not the deacon. It is separate. It is the gift of an evangelist. So, these are talking about spiritual gifts. So, someone who is an evangelist must first have the gift of an evangelist. They also must do the work of an evangelist. Let's turn quickly to 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 5. Here, Paul is writing to his beloved son of the faith, Timothy. He is about to die, and he is giving his last words to Timothy. He says, Timothy, I'm on my deathbed. I'm about to be executed, about to be beheaded. And before that, Timothy, I wanted to give you a solemn charge. A solemn goodbye, farewell. And he says, this is the thing, Timothy, that in my whole ministry, my whole life, Timothy, I want you to get this. I don't want you to miss this. He says, Timothy, in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 5, he says, But watch thou in all things, endure afflictions, do the work of an evangelist. Make full proof of thy ministry. Why does he say, Timothy, do the work of an evangelist? Because in verse 6 he says, right now, ready to be offered, that's his death, and the time of my departure is at hand. I have fought a good fight. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith. Paul says, Timothy, I'm about to die. And the last thing I want to do, I want to tell you, is do the work of an evangelist. He says, Timothy, if you forget everything I've ever taught you, one thing I want you to remember is, even though you are a pastor, not an evangelist, I want you to make sure that you do the work of an evangelist. What is the work? To be an evangelist, you must have the gift. You must also have the calling. You have to have the authority and be sent out. Sunday, I was sent out to be an evangelist. So you have to have the gift, you have to have the calling, the authority, sent out by a local church to do the work, and you have to do the work of an evangelist. What is the work of an evangelist? Well, let's start out with pastor. What is the work of a pastor? That means shepherd. So what's the work of a shepherd? He takes care of the flocks. Right, what animal? What about goats? Does he take care of the goats? What about cows? No, shepherd takes care of the sheep. Are there cows in this world? Are there goats in this world? Right? But the shepherd does not mind himself so much with them. He has 100 sheep. If one gets lost, the good shepherd does what? He cares for that one sheep that was lost. Why? Because he's a shepherd. He has the heart of a shepherd. He is a pastor. A pastor's primary work is to those that are his sheep. Sheep are those that are in the flock. That is your local congregation. We talked about the assembly, the ecclesia, the local church. The pastor, the shepherd of the local church, his primary, what gets him up in the morning, what makes his heart beat a little faster is when you talk to him about his sheep. Your pastor, Pastor Jeremiah, he knows all of your names. He knows a lot of your birthdays. He knows how many kids you guys have. He knows the name of your kids. He knows the ages of your kids. When we came over there, the first thing he did is he started memorizing all the names of my children. Why? Because he has the heart of a pastor, of a shepherd. He wants to know what problems I have in my life, what I need prayer for. He wakes up and he prays for me and for you all the time. Why? Because we are his flock. We are in his flock. We are his sheep. And he'll give account before God, the good shepherd. of how well he maintained and guarded and watched and fed and protected his sheep. That is the heart, that is the job of the pastor. The evangelist, his job is to evangelize. So let's make this very, very simple. The deacon, which means servant, his job is to serve. Good. All right. The shepherd, the pastor, his job is to, or as a verb, shepherd. Right? The shepherd's job is to shepherd. The servant's job is to serve. The evangelist's job is to evangelize. Good. The word means good news. To one who spreads the good news. What is the good news? Is the good news that David killed Goliath and Goliath did not beat David in the battle? Is that the good news? It's good news, but it's not the good news, right? Is the good news that one day the lion will lay down with the lamb during the 1,000-year millennial reign of Jesus Christ? Is that good news? It is. Is it the good news? No, it's not the good news. The evangelist doesn't go out and spread Bible trivia. I don't talk to people about Samuel's sons, Hophni and Phinehas, and how they were stealing the meat that was meant for the people and took it for it themselves. I don't spread that news. That's something you might learn from your pastor and all the lessons from it. An evangelist's main primary objective is to evangelize the lost. That is the good news of the gospel, the passion of Jesus Christ, that God came down in the flesh and dwelt, bodily flesh among men, died, rose again, and because of him we have salvation through his blood. That is the good news. That is what the evangelist specializes in. Yesterday afternoon, I was evangelizing with Brother Hep, and we came to an older couple there in the Bicep area where I'm at. And they said that their daughter converted to being a Baptist. And she married a Baptist pastor, and they're raising 4 children together. And that for many years, they know her daughter and son-in-law had been praying for them. And I said, well, when you're sick, you call for a doctor. Hey, if you're sick, don't call for an evangelist. I don't know. Okay? If you have a toothache, you call for a dentist. If you want a loved one to receive salvation, you would call for an evangelist. I told them that their daughter was praying, their son-in-law was praying, and that's why I am there. Because God had set up an appointment. I was on God's time, not Filipino time, not American time. I told them the appointment was set in God's time. I'm the evangelist. They prayed that an evangelist would come. An evangelist was here. So I said, okay, well listen. They gave me banana that they boiled in water. Okay? Let me just give you a little bit of a pointer on evangelists. Don't give them bananas boiled in water. That's just weird. Give me the long yellow kind, not those silly little green flat kind. So they gave me some water, asked me what drink I like, gave me some boiled bananas, set up some chairs, and they sat down and they said, okay, the evangelist is here, now share with us. After years, I don't know, even decades of their daughter and son-in-law praying, they received Jesus Christ. Amen. So, what did that couple need? Did they need a pastor to come and share with them what is the true meaning of Exodus when Moses turned the water into blood? Did they need that? No, what they needed was the good news of Jesus Christ. They didn't need to worry about the water being turned into blood. Amen. That is the work, that is the job of an evangelist. So it's a separate gift than the gift of pastor-teacher. The gift of pastor-teacher is to nourish. It's primarily about Christian growth. The evangelist, he works with salvation. So the pastor, he primarily deals with saved people or lost people. The pastor. Don't be scared. Should I turn the video camera there off so that way you'll answer? Alright, so the pastor, he primarily deals with saved people or lost people? Saved. And the evangelist, he primarily deals with saved people or lost people? Lost. Right? That's why nobody likes the evangelist. He knocks on your door, he wakes you up, you're having a siesta, and someone's knocking on your door, and you want them to just go away. Nobody likes the evangelist. So, the job of the evangelist is not to pastor or shepherd sheep. His job is to find a goat, and make that goat a sheep, and then send that sheep to the pasture. Right? That's what the job of the evangelist is. It's to find the sheep that are outside of the sheepfold. Jesus mentions the sheep outside the sheepfold. Those are souls that are not won yet, but Jesus is already watching for them and waiting for them. The evangelist's job is to say, hey sheep, you're outside the sheepfold. You need a shepherd. Go to your shepherd. Go to your pastor. Okay? Sometimes the sheep will say, thank you for leading me to the Lord. For the rest of my life, I will be grateful to you. And if you want to be my pastor, I will give you my tithes and offerings, and whatever you say, I'll do it. It's tempting, isn't it? The evangelist would say, well, I could use the money. Right? But then he would become a shepherd. And now he would be dealing with saved people, not lost people. That's why normally you will see people start out as an evangelist and then transition into a separate office, a separate audience, a separate work, using a separate spiritual gift from evangelist, changing over to pastor. Why do it that way? Well, there's a reason. It's not really a good reason, but there is a reason. It's because so many people with the gift of evangelist, after they evangelize, they become the pastor, and they transition into pastor-teacher. And so someone who has the gift of pastor, how is he going to pastor a church? All the evangelists are pastoring them. He has to do the work of evangelist and evangelize, and then he can become a pastor. So that's really not the biblical pattern, but because people are not doing it the right way, because a lot of times evangelists will say, well, it's not really my gift, it's not my calling, it's not really the job that I was called to do, but I sure would like to have a consistent income that comes from tithes and offerings of members, so I think I'm going to transition to being a pastor. So it's really kind of not an abuse, but just kind of a wrong thinking that you can just transition back and forth between pastor and evangelist. So I am in evangelist, not a pastor. That's something totally different. Okay? So what I do in the Bicep area is I go out to lost people and I talk to them about the good news, that they need to be saved. So what I'm doing right now in Bicep is I'm going door to door. I'm going in the highways and byways and the marketplaces and evangelizing. I've had the help of Brother RJ, Brother Heb, and especially Brother Vincent this last week. Brother Vincent's been with me with maybe 4 or 5 of the 6 days. So he's been a very big help. And what we're doing is we're going and teaching people and saying, hey, we are starting a church in the area. Now, primarily what I'm looking for is, again, lost people, so that they might be won, so that they might get saved, and that they might join a church. Okay, so I had a stamp made. It says Bicep Baptist, and then it has my cell phone number on it. That's all it says. Is God going to plant a church there in Bicep, and the name of it will be Bicep Baptist? I don't know. I'm not a pastor. I'm an evangelist. My job is to evangelize. What does the evangelist look for? He looks for, of course, lost souls that need to be saved. And he also is looking for a key man. I found other types of men. A lot of other types. I found a dope man. RJ wore a shirt one time. It said, dope man. That's all it said. I don't know where he got it, what it was supposed to be. I said, RJ, I'm not looking for a dope man. I'm looking for a key man. Right? So the evangelist goes and he doesn't look for a place to start a church. He doesn't say, I'm just going to stay in this church place and I'm going to stay here until I die. The evangelist goes and he looks for a man. He looks for men. And he says, okay, I found a man, and that man will be the pastor in this place. And then he goes on. And if there's no man to be found, he goes to a different place. If there's no souls to be won, and they're all rejecting, shakes the dust off his feet, and he goes to the different town. If persecution arises, the evangelist says, I'm not in the business of being persecuted to death. I will go to a different town. If you look at what Paul did when he got persecuted in Derbe or Lystra or the city in Antioch, he went to the next town. He didn't say, nope, I'm going to stay here until I die. He didn't do that. He said, if you don't want me, there are other places I can go. Whereas a pastor says, if you don't want me, I'll stay here until you stone me to death. A pastor is tied down to an area, the area where his sheep are. That's the area where his flocks graze. But the evangelist doesn't have a flock. He goes wherever the Lord would lead him, wherever there are fruit, wherever there are results. So what am I doing in Visa on behalf of Society Bible Baptist Church Manila? I'm evangelizing. Right? I was just counting yesterday. There was supposed to be one girl that came with me this morning, and she got saved yesterday afternoon, and she says, I don't think my dad will let me come. I said, well, let me bring my wife and kind of sweet talk your dad. So late last night, after 8 o'clock, we went and talked to him. He said, sure, I'll let my daughter come. I'll let her come. Come pick her up tomorrow morning. And then this morning early, I got a couple texts. And the text was from the father. He says, I didn't have the courage to tell you to your face, but I'm dotting the I and know my daughter is not allowed to go with you ever, anywhere. So the point was I'm going to take someone that was newly saved and bring them to find a pastor. So I counted that there were 13 this last week. There were 13 salvation decisions made, prayers that were made. At least. I don't recognize those as true conversion decisions until they are baptized. Right? They're not added to the church until they're baptized. I don't believe that. They are saved until they say, yeah, I'm saved and I'm willing to be baptized. Until they're baptized and come up out of the water, I will say, maybe you are saved, maybe not, but I cannot recognize it officially until you're baptized. Right? Once people start getting baptized, I have the authority to baptize, so I can, although I prefer to find a key man to do it. Once enough souls are baptized in Visa, then they can form a church. They can call it Visa Baptist, they can call it whatever they want, whatever their pastor wants. Who will be their pastor? Whomever they vote to be their pastor. And likely, they will vote for whomever the evangelist would find for them. So what am I doing in Visa? I'm doing two things. I'm testing the area to see if there are enough people that will be saved to form a church that can be organized. And the second thing I'm looking for is a key man that can pastor that church. A man that they will vote to be their pastor. Amen. They won't vote for me because I will not be on the ballot. My name will not appear. They cannot write me in. Alright? I have no plans to be the pastor there. And the pastor will take over and become a fully independent, organized work. Okay, so you can say, well, what are you before you're an organized church? We're a church in embryo. We're a gospel group. We're just a group of people that just recently got saved, led by an evangelist, waiting to be turned over to a key man, to a pastor. Alright, so that is what I'm doing in Visa. I'm doing the work of an evangelist. So you can say, okay, does that mean the pastor never needs to witness to anybody? He just only worries about his flock? No, because Paul said to Timothy, before I die, Timothy, remember, even though you're a pastor, your gift is pastor teacher, don't forget to do the work. Don't be an evangelist. That's something separate. He said, don't forget, you need to do the work of an evangelist. What about you, Christian? You don't have the gift of evangelist. You don't hold the office of evangelist. You've not been sent out. You too must do the work of an evangelist. Right? And does that mean the evangelist never cares about Christian growth? No, as it might not be a shepherd, might not be a pastor, might not ever be one, but the evangelist also does care about Christian growth. It's just that primarily an evangelist cares about the lost getting saved, and primarily a pastor cares about saved people growing in the Lord. But the evangelist does the work of a pastor at times, and at times the pastor must do the work of an evangelist. So I wanted you to know that we're very busy in Visa. You can ask Ed and RJ, and especially Vincent, what their schedule is like, but it's a busy schedule. We've been doing a lot of tract distribution, knocking on a lot of doors, and we're seeing a lot of results. So I have right now 10 families that are interested in forming a church. In 6 days, 10 families. So actually more than 10 families, but some of them I doubt their sincerity. So I have at least 10 families that are interested already in organizing work. That's just 6 days old. We started on Monday and we went through Saturday night. From Monday morning until Saturday night. We started at 6 a.m. Monday morning. I got home last night at 9 p.m. Saturday night. So what are we doing? We're looking for souls to be saved and that are interested in forming a Baptist church. To be pastored by a key man. Not a dope man. A key man. Alright. Let's have a quick devotional. I just wanted to give you a ministry update and a little bit of evangelism philosophy. I know we call them missionaries, but that's really a Catholic term. It is a Catholic term. And even the idea of, you can turn to Matthew chapter 7, verse 11, while I finish this thought. The idea of sending out an evangelist, missionary, an evangelist to start a work to pastor that same work is kind of asking him to do double. And unfortunately, because of just evangelists not moving on to the next place, sometimes that's kind of what we have to do. So, people like JP and James, they have it harder than I do. You know why? Because they have to exercise 2 spiritual gifts at the same time. I know my limits. I'm no JP, I'm no James. They are more spiritual than I am, or they're going to take a bigger bite than I'm willing to take. Some people say, well, why don't you form a church and then become the pastor? Because I'm not that spiritual. Right? It's too hard for me. I know my limitations. I'll just be an evangelist na lang and not try and do both. Alright? So, let's turn to Matthew chapter 7, verse 11. Alright. It says, Matthew 7:7. Matthew 7:7. It says, ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and him that knocketh, it shall be opened. Let me ask you a question. Later in the book of James it says, ye have not because ye ask not. One of these days, when we get to heaven, we're going to have some questions for God. And I think sometimes some of our questions will go like this. God, why didn't you? That's how we might phrase our question. God, Lord Jesus, why didn't you fill in the blank? And one thing I don't want to happen to me, even though I believe it will, and one thing I don't want to have happen to you is when God answers our questions. I have no idea, I don't have the answers, none of us do. God does in heaven. But one answer I don't want to hear from God, because it will be Sion, is that God would say, because you did not ask. Wouldn't that be nakakahiya? If God were to say, I had this ready for you. I had it all wrapped up. It had a nice pretty bow on it. It was ready to be delivered to your door. All you had to do was ask. How simple is that? How easy is that? Just to ask. Wouldn't it be embarrassing if you got to heaven and God said, if only you had asked, you would have received it. Sometimes we want things from God and we don't get it. And what do? We complain. Or we feel depressed. Bigo. We feel walang sasay. Or walang pag-asa. Right? Because we did not get what we wanted. And we think, God, you didn't give it to me. And God is thinking, you did not ask. It's kind of a joke sometimes. We say, why didn't you give me this to the kids? And said, well, all you had to do was ask, even though it's not true. But it is with God. There are things that you could have in your life, and the only reason you don't have that is because you did not ask. What a shallow, low reason, shameful reason to not get something that God was willing to give you. Now, if you ask for $1 million, you ask for a new house or a car, maybe God would say, well, it's not in the cards, it's not in my plan for you. And so you can ask something and not receive it. And I'm not saying, and then that's fine. But what's not fine is that God would have something for you. God has a plan. God has it prepared. And the only reason you don't get it is because you did not ask. How hard is it to ask your dad, your heavenly Father, how hard is it for you to ask him something? Is it hard or easy? Easy. Medyo easy or super easy? It's super easy. This is basic. This is ABCs. If you want something from God, make sure you ask. This is not a deep message. It's not complicated. I just don't want us to go to heaven. And I have a feeling that when we do go to heaven, there's going to be times where God says, hey, if only you would ask. And we're going to say, what? Are you kidding? I could have had that. All I had to do was ask. And God's going to say, yeah. I told you, ask and you shall receive. I told you, you have not because you ask not. I want us to learn this lesson now so we don't have to learn the lesson in heaven when it's too late. If you want something from God, and of course it's not sin, don't ask for sin. Make sure you ask. Alright? Real quick. It says, ask and it shall be given you. Do we have like a little note you can do? RJ? Alright, I just want you to put the word ask. Unless the program's not over. Can you do that? Alright. Ask and it shall be given you with a capital A. What's the second thing? Seek and ye shall find. After ask, RJ, I want you to put the word seek. Alright? Below it. Below ask, I want you to put the word seek. Okay? And then what's the third thing RJ is going to put up there? Knock. Dope man. You please put knock underneath the word seek. This is the key to understanding the verse. The key right here to understanding the verse. Dope man is going to put it up on the screen for us. He's never even going to burn that shirt. Okay, now I want you to remove that and it shall be given to you. Remove that. Okay? What is the key to this verse? Someone's going to say it out loud when they see it up on the screen.
Ask.
What is it? What does that spell? A-S-K. It's not just seeking. It's not knocking. You need to do that first. But before all else, make sure you ask.